Boxing Source here once again, and I know that I kind of talked about this in a little bit in our midweek report, but I wanted to get into this a little bit more. And this is about Gennady Golovkin. Yeah, the same Gennady Golovkin that, as y'all know, relinquished the WBA middleweight title. The same Gennady Golovkin that relinquished the IBF middleweight title before that. Now, there are a number of people that talk about Gennady Golovkin like he's one of the greatest middleweights of all time. Okay, cool. And yes, this is one of those takes where, I just got to be straight up with it. But for those that know me in reference to boxing and who, I'm a fan of or whatever it is, or who I support and who I don't support, they know that I've criticized Gennady Golovkin for years. And so we're going to run this down. Okay? Gennady Golovkin is a fighter that never fought for the WBO middleweight title, regardless of who held it. Whether it was Demetrius Andrade, whether it was Andy Lee, whether it was, Dimitri Pirog, okay? Other fighters have held the belt, and he didn't go for it. Billy Joe Saunders, WBO champ, didn't go for it at one point. So that's one thing. The other thing is, my assessment of Golovkin is he went for the bag. And if you go for the bag, you're a professional prize fighter. You fight for a prize. That's one thing. But there were a number of people, media or outside, that were saying like he's out there for a legacy. There were a number of fighters that were out there that said that they wanted to go after Gennady Golovkin. Didn't quite happen, Erislandy Lara, to a certain extent, wanted to face Gennady Golovkin. Didn't quite happen. Okay. Andre Ward said that he wanted to face Gennady Golovkin and didn't have much issues if they wanted to fight at a catch weight. Didn't quite happen. After Golovkin had his second fight with Santos Saul Alvarez Barragan, where Canelo ended up winning that fight by decision to hand Golovkin his first professional loss. We could have had something where he could have had another chapter in his professional career. But, Gennady Golovkin kind of like went through a little bit of a chill route. And that kind of like hit me, man. Like, come on. Facing guys like Steve Rose, you facing guys like Kamil Cesaro-Meta. Come on, man. Now, that Sergey Derevyanchenko fight Okay, I could give him a little bit with that, but the whole thing with the Sergey Derevyanchenko fight, some people felt like Derevyanchenko got him on that. But even with that, cool. Was able to get that IBF belt on that. And what does he do? Does he have unification bouts for a good little bit? No. Not until a good time later. Against another fighter, which we'll go into in a bit. But, check it. When he won that IBF title, you had guys that were, like I said, holding the WBO belt and Demetrius Andrade that were fighting on the same network or whatever banner that it was as Gennady Golovkin. But was a unification belt put in place between Golovkin and Demetrius Andrade? No. You had the WBC champion Jamal Charlo, who had faced Sergey Derevyanchenko and beat Derevyanchenko probably a little bit easier than Golovkin had that win over Derevyanchenko. But did we get a unification in that instance? No. We got a unification bout between Gennady Golovkin and Ryota Murata. Come on. So after he gets that win, IBF WBA middleweight champ, what does he do? Goes after Santos Saul Alvarez Barragan once again, and that is at super middleweight. So you mean to tell me that all that time that people were seeing if you could get up to super middleweight division when you had your initial run at middleweight, when you were unifying titles at middleweight, that there wasn't really much else out there at middleweight for you to go after since you wouldn't fight for the WBO belt? You could have went up to super middleweight and challenged someone like an Andre Ward. You didn't do it. But after all of this, you were willing to go up to super middleweight just to face Santos Saul Alvarez Barragan once again. And that would have been for the undisputed super middleweight title. So that's one thing. But you were facing Santos Saul Alvarez Barragan because it was Santos Saul Alvarez Barragan. If it was probably anybody else there in the super middleweight division, would Golovkin have faced him? Man, I don't know. But after that, we didn't hear from Golovkin. And then here we are, fast forward to pretty much now. Gives up the WBA belt after it was going to be a purse bid coming up for Gennady Golovkin and Erislandy Lara to have a fight for the WBA middleweight title, as Lara was the regular champion. This is after Golovkin gave up the IBF belt after he wouldn't defend that title against Esquiva Falcao, which they had actually made an exemption for. So he would have had a priority to defend the titles against Esquiva Falcao over Erislandy Lara. And that still didn't happen. So then that meant WBA was due. And he wouldn't do that either. I'm like, come on. Now, hey, y'all can say what y'all say, man, but listen, something like I just can't understand this whole thing with Gennady Golovkin. Hopefully y'all could help me out with it. But this move by Golovkin kind of like says, yo, he seems like he was out for certain motives. And I don't know if it was all for glory. I mean, if it's for money, hey, I won't, like, I ain't got no qualms about that. But you can't really say, hey, that you wanted to kind of like stamp your legacy as probably one of the greatest middleweights out there when you were only pretty much trying to have one fight to define your career at middleweight. When you could have had multiple fights to define your career at middleweight. Didn't happen. Or you could have had other fights above middleweight before you had that third fight with Santos or Alvarez Barragan. But didn't do it. Now, will this mean that Golovkin will continue his career and fight someone else? That remains to be seen. But this move, I'm like, come on, man. Come on, man. This is Gennady Golovkin, folks. And if y'all didn't see it before, y'all pretty much see it right here. That his motive was more towards getting the bag and getting glory. And I just can't view him as one of those guys to be up there as one of those top middleweights in comparison to a number of guys that have fought at middleweight and that have established their careers at middleweight and have been among the greatest at middleweight. I mean, I'm talking about like Carlos Monzon, right? I'm talking about like Marvin Hagler. I'm talking about like Jake LaMotta. B-Hop. B-Hop just recently, had the thing where he won all of those belts, had that win over Oscar De La Hoya, had that record number of title defenses. Bernard Hopkins. Of course, Sugar Ray Robinson. That goes without saying. But it's almost like, when Golovkin had his run at middleweight, his initial run at middleweight, they were like talking about him like he's like a top 5 or top 3 middleweight of all time. No. And I'm like I said, you see his resume, you're like, how can you stack that up with those other greats that were on there? Like, I just don't understand it. But I know there will be a number of people that will disagree with this, but I mean, it's all there for you to see. Like I told you, I would say some controversial stuff on here. I will be able to drop some controversial stuff on here. And this particular topic is one of those things. So I know that there's going to be some, pushback on this. But I said what I said. And I'm sticking with it.